that mustache.
A little
Like young Sprout without that.
beard.
Yeah.
Oh. I was all right with that. Do I need to grow another? I have trouble with the girls then.
Get started, Jerry. Or you want to wait for Ken? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Nacogdoches City Planning and Zoning Commission together for the Monday, September 9th, 2019. If we could start, we'll start with approval of the minutes and consider and take action on the minutes from July 8th, 2019 regular session. We have a few minutes to look over those.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we'll move on. To next, outcome from City Council meeting on July 16th of 2019.
Okay, the outcome from the meeting on the 16th, 2019 of July, it was a specific use permit for the light manufacturing Solero Energy out on the Loop is what y'all looked at. Planning and zoning voted 4-0 and City Council voted 5-0 on that one.
Good to know. Thank you for the update. We'll move on. For agenda item number 4, public hearing considering a request for a zone change from B2 general business to B3 central business for lots 17 and 18, parcel ID 22764 and 17A, part of lot 13, parcel ID 22765, City Block 3, generally located at the block along East Hospital Street between North Church and North Mound Street.
All right. So good evening, Commissioners. We're here to present to you a rezoning case for lot 17, 18, 17A, and part of 13, generally located on East Hospital Street. This rezoning will go from B2, general business, to proposed B3, central business. It has been submitted by George Barham IV. So here's a location map showing where it is. To the right is Mound Street, and farther south you'll see the beginnings of downtown, and to the west is that large building right there is the Fredonia Hotel. If you look at the aerial map, it's a little easier to see that. So this is a site photo. This is the east side of the site. This is one of the parcels. This is a parking lot. It's currently undeveloped. And then to the west is some general commercial and professional services presented. So a little bit of background on this site. This reason for this rezoning is that George Barham IV, the applicant, wishes to and proposes to redevelop this into a mixed-use development that will comprise of residences, offices. The current existing development that you see on the screen, as far as we are aware and as far as the zoning applicant has been so far, states that it will not be redeveloped, though that we understand that this rezoning case does not affect redevelopment. So if you look at the zoning map currently, in a 200-foot radius, everything is commercial. It's all B2 general business or B3 central business. So the current zoning B2 allows for higher intensity land uses by right. These include transportation land uses, storage, different auto services. Under B3 central business, this is not allowed. These land uses are restricted. Either they are not allowed by right, or they would require a specific use permit and that process to be able to go through to be able to allow any type of higher intensity auto-centric land use that you would see. B3 central business allows mixed use, and that is one of the reasons that the applicant is wanting to propose a rezoning to this parcel. Because B2 general business is exclusionary in its uses, it does not allow mixed use. It does not allow, for example, for the first floor to be commercial and the top floor to be residential. It only allows either commercial or residential. So future build-out on the parcel will be restricted to exclusionary land uses if it stays as B2 general business, but if it is allowed and if the commission approves the rezoning or the recommendation for the rezoning, then it will allow a mixed-use development to be able to occur on this parcel, this parking lot. Staff does not believe that the introduction of a mixed-use development through this rezoning will have any likely adverse impact on the surrounding retail or residential uses. So if we look at the future land use map, we see that it is currently central mixed use all surrounding this, and the subject parcel is currently allowed for central mixed use. So a rezoning will stay in adherence to what the future land use map and what the comprehensive plan dictates central mixed use. The comprehensive plan dictates central mixed use land uses as in the central core of the city, in and around the traditional downtown, where a mix of retail, offices, residential, and public uses is permitted and encouraged, subject to development and compatibility standards. So guiding the comprehensive plan is the future land use map, and as it relates to the land use section of the comprehensive plan, staff believes that this rezoning will preserve and enhance downtown character and economic investment for the downtown, and it will also encourage more mixed-use downtown that the comprehensive plan and the land use section highly encourages for downtown. We sent out 20 notifications to different surrounding property owners. Of them, we heard back from 2 people that were in favor of this, and we have heard back from no people that have not been in favor of this. We don't have a flood map because none of the property is in the FEMA floodplain at all. If we look at the west, we see the Fredonia Hotel and Convention Center. The existing land use is hotel, restaurant services, and professional services. If we look to the south, we have none other than Mr. Ken Deppish's law firm right there.
It's a good-looking building.
Yeah, it's a great building. And then other insurance and professional services. To the north, we have residences and commercial aspects. And then to the east, we have another commercial and professional service to the development. So some key points to note is the current development is allowed by right, either in B2 general business or the proposed B3 central business. Rezoning this will restrict the intensity for future development and allow mixed-use development on the site for the parking lot. And the third point is the mixed-use development will change what is an inefficient land use, a parking lot, into a higher tax-generating parcel for the city that will also remain compatible with the surrounding neighborhood character as it produces a higher tax revenue for development. So that brings my presentation to an end, and I will yield to questions and to the commission.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none. This is an open meeting, so if anybody would like to speak for or against, feel free to step up and voice your thoughts. You would state your name, please.
I'll do it. George Barham, good afternoon. Thank y'all for being here. Let me pass these out if I could. I just took a quick shot of the lot, the 5,000 square foot proposed building and the 18 parking stalls. That was something that we had Army Curtis look at for us. That was done some years ago. That was for a proposed office building that we were going to do. Those plans didn't materialize. Had a build-to-suit sign there for probably 2 or 3 years. Had several inquiries. Nothing got serious. So my wife and I decided, you know what? Let's kind of regroup and look at a different plan of action. So the second page, that is just strictly conceptual. It's not architectural. It's not, we haven't gone that far yet, but our idea is to have something similar to that type of structure, I think it'd be kind of cool. So we're looking to make about a $600,000 or $700,000 investment on a lot that 30 years ago I used to mow when it was grass. So I was so proud Dad paved that. So anyway, we'll have to do quite a bit of foundation work when that time comes. We're not in any big hurry. I know residential. We've got 6 bays next door that are commercial. Those are kind of hit and miss. So we feel like having this opportunity to have residential in that neighborhood will help kind of drive the area and kind of help nail down that corner.
Have you thought about how many apartments or anything you're gonna do upstairs yet, or just still conceptual thoughts?
It's conceptual, and our idea maybe is to just go ahead and do a firewall and hook on to the side of the building that's existing to get us off of the corner, because I have to maintain a visibility triangle whenever you get to the corner, and so that's gonna limit my footprint,
Sure.
and that's why I need to go north and still achieve parking.
Yeah.
So I'll promise I'll have adequate parking.
Well, you'll have to, or they won't permit you.
Well, one would think, but I'm getting dumped on right now pretty bad because
Really?
of decisions made prior.
Oh.
But nonetheless, we'll turn a free parking place that's currently being used now into residential with adequate parking. And what we'll do is we'll shut down the drive on Hospital Street, and the entrance will be behind on Mound. Yep.
Okay.
And then we'll still allow for the parking for the commercial spaces there on the other side behind those 6 lease spots. So we've, we own or manage about 300 properties in town, and we have a full staff of folks that take requests and based on our office meetings and people that the desire to live downtown continues to be there. So we want to try to fill that need. So I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Does anyone else like to speak?
I'm Matt Moore. I live right next to there on Church Street. I think the zoning that I did mixed use is a great idea. I remember that lot before it got paved, not where the project is. That used to be Ms. Middlebrook's house, and she had a big oak tree. It'd probably take 3 of y'all to reach around, and they wiped it out whenever they built that parking lot.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good concept. One thing I would suggest, if possible, is that when you're doing this project, that you consider the streetscape, what the street actually looks like in front of it, trees, parking, not parking, but sidewalks.
Sure.
Begin to, because a lot of this idea behind mixed use came from looking at downtown Nacogdoches and seeing, well, we got downtown Nacogdoches and people live above businesses, so that's a good idea. But what makes Nacogdoches downtown beautiful is the buildings, of course, but also the streetscape. Where you can walk down and, enjoy it. So if the building gets built, right up on the property line and there's no public space there, it's going to be, not as good as it could be for the public. Now, from a, purely from a cash flow, monetary, real estate point of view, yes. But as a planning commission looking out for, the public as a whole, I would suggest y'all consider a way to ensure that that streetscape is going to be done. And it's a piecemeal thing that has to be done over, years and decades, but, over time it makes a big difference.
Sure.
So I'm in support of the zoning. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else like to speak? Please.
My name is John Clark, and I only have a question. If someone could explain to me a little bit more the difference between B2 and B3.
Go ahead.
Okay. So just in a general way, B2, if you want to come up here, you can. Yeah, come up here. So the general difference is that B2 is a more, well, it's general business versus B3, which is central business in the same name. B2 general business allows a lot more general commercial development. So what you see up and down North Street, a lot of there's a larger setback required usually for parking. A lot of the land uses they revolve around the car, whereas B3 central business is downtown. Whereas you have this traditional development where the setback is usually closer to the street. It allows for a lot more mixed-use development. It restricts, for example, you can't put a car shop or a mechanic shop. You can't put, currently you can put a storage building on that plot under B2. You can put a drive-through restaurant there. So B3 tries to limit the character of the area and allow it to be a lot more traditional compared to B2 general business, which allows a lot more commercial
So
aspect.
B3 is more restrictive
Yes,
than
sir.
B2.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anyone else? I have any questions? Thoughts?
I don't have any.
I, going back to what Mr. Moore said about preserving or trying to focus on the streetscape, we have some limited, I think, if we rezone this, we have limited input on what we can do as far as requiring any sort of sidewalk or landscaping. But I know we updated the ordinance last year. Do you have any
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Yes, I was going to say the city updated a landscape ordinance to require landscaping for every commercial development. So in this case, the applicant would have to find a way to bring in some form of landscaping. If the area has some challenges with planting trees and stuff like that, I think the ordinance still allows us to sit down with the applicant to find alternatives. It could be shrubs or anything that would still beautify the area. So for landscaping, it's a must. But in terms of sidewalk, if it's not in our sidewalk, what is the plan, then it'll be difficult for us to implement that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if we know it's going to increase foot traffic?
That is one thing we always we would recommend to the applicant to
Yeah.
consider sidewalks, and we would leave it to him to decide if he wants to, because the ordinance does not. So.
Ken, if I can
Sure.
interject, currently, right now,
There.
Mound and Hospital have sidewalks.
Yep.
So they're on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
We're also going to make some plans in that parking lot behind the building to notch off an area for potential, Mound Street, bronze statue, whatever that historic walk program is.
Mhm.
Been doing, the Episcopal Church and at the Sigdahl House, which my great-grandparents built, and then on that lot as well. So we have some plans we're working with the Historic Foundation to do a statue, but that's way in its infancy.
Okay.
But yeah, there's sidewalks there.
Yeah. Do you know if that's an easement the city has, the sidewalk? Sorry. Just wondered.
I bet it probably is.
And
To my knowledge, it is, because I know that when I met a couple of days ago with Tommy Fendeisen, who's currently working on the survey and the site triangle, and at the end of the day, I need somebody to spray paint on the pavement where I can build. Then within that, I can tell, then I can know what I can do.
Well,
with-
Tommy will do that.
And he's really good at it. But
He'll
he
tell you
said,
exactly what you can do.
he said that Hospital Street is pretty definable on what the city right-of-way is and my setback, which more than includes the sidewalk. Mound Street is a little, he was visiting with Steve Bartlett on that to get some clarification, because one deed had 16 feet and one had 18, and they're going to work all that out. But
Okay.
it'll allow us to, whatever it is, utilize a couple of parking spaces within that right-of-way, or setback rather, not right-of-way. But the fact that they have sidewalks now is great. And then I visited with Laura Culpepper, and she said that she's currently working with the city on expanding where they're going to have directional signage and street lamps and those kind of things. So our intent is 100% to do our part in including some type of the green street fluted bases and things like that that are around town, in hopes that other folks will do that in the outlying streets around immediate downtown. And I've cited Williams, Arizona, and I've cited, oh my goodness, a place in Louisiana that we've gone to, that Woodworth, Louisiana, that they've done a really good job of that, of expanding streets out to make it a little bit more
All-inclusive.
yeah, all inclusive. And when people are shopping and going to downtown area, it's not just 1 or 2 blocks. It kind of extends out some. So
So is there gonna be parking on the street like there is, like in front of your other building,
none whatsoever. That street parking is already
grandfathered in?
grandfathered in, but that would not be for the use of this building, because we'll wind up putting up some kind of wrought iron railing and some landscaping and such between the curb and the front of the facade of the building. But that on-street parking, and that's what city staff recommended, to go to B3 to cut that head-end parking out, because I know when I pull into my sister's shop, my tail end's hanging out in the street. So that was probably a good design 60 years ago when my grandfather built that building, but not today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that street's gotten a lot busier.
yeah, exactly.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Any discussion by anyone? I'll entertain a motion for or against.
I move that we approve the plot.
Is there a second?
Zone change.
Make a second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Motion passes. Thank you. I will move on to section, or excuse me, bullet point number 5, staff update on corridor studies.
Well, we wanted to update you on some of the projects we are currently working on in the planning office. We are looking at 4 corridors in the city. We are looking at North Street, South Street, the new I-69 overpass, and then looking at the intersection of Old Tyler and Austin. The reason being is City Council met, they had a workshop that I think it's about last month, and wanted staff to look at other development areas apart from North Street and South Street to see what our future plans are and to see how best we can look at development within the city. So I know my map is upside down. I just wanted to put it in the landscape form, but we actually did an existing land use on North Street. We drove along the whole street, identified every single business on there, and then we classified them. And I'm going to send this in an email to everyone for you to have your copy. So based on our reconnaissance survey and doing the existing land uses, we even got to realize that there are vacant lots along North Street that can be redeveloped for other uses in the future. So for now, it's just an existing land use map. We haven't planned the next thing moving forward, and the goal is to have a community meeting with everybody and every stakeholder to see how best we want to see our city grow. We have the same for South Street. We also did a drive along South Street, identify every use along the street, and then we classify them based on the uses. And alongside street, we also have a lot of vacant lands. One of the good things along Side Street is the good sidewalks along the street, which I think is very good for any development that wants to come into the city. And then this is the future land use map for South Street. You realize that it's all designated for commercial use, but then the question that comes in is what kind of commercial uses do we want to see along South Street? Once again, the goal is to have a stakeholders meeting with all citizens to see how best we want the city, how we want the city grow in the future. And then we also look at the I-69 corridor, the proposed interstate. We drove along it as well, identify every land use, and then a lot of commercial going on, a lot of vacant lands as well. But then the question that comes into mind is, if the interstate comes in, what kind of development do we want to see along there? What kind of development is it likely to attract? For example, I know that a business like Cracker Barrel they like to associate themselves along highways, state highways. So these are some of the thoughts that we should be thinking about. It is possible to attract some shopping complexes that like to locate along highways, Texas Roadhouse, or some development that like to locate along interstate or service roads. So it is good to know that we have some vacant lands that can be redeveloped for such users. And then the future land use for that area is also commercial. And then we zoomed into Old Tyler Road and West Austin, and this was part of the discussion at the city council meeting. Council members identified that intersection as a vibrant intersection that could be redeveloped to serve as another commercial hub for the city of Nacogdoches. And as we drove around, we realized there's a lot of vacant lands along, but I think there are challenges with regards to the terrain of the land. It falls on some areas and very high on some other areas. So it's being looked at, and once again, we would also look at having a meeting with community members, stakeholders, to see how best we want to develop it. If you look at the map, the intersection show for the future land use map, the whole intersection is carved out to be commercial development. And so that shows that it's a great potential area to see other commercial development coming into the city. So basically the goal is not to just look at North Street and South Street. We should start looking at other areas in the city that can be redeveloped and would have a positive influence to attract development to those areas. We did an internal SWOT analysis, and today we are only going to talk about Old Tyler Road and Austin Street. And once again, this was not in discussion with citizens or any stakeholders. This is what we in the planning office sat down and discussed with other city staff, and then we looked at it and realized that some of the strengths in the area is, first of all, talking about the land uses, the transportation in the streetscape. We have good roads out there. Some of it's already the street looks good. It's not one of those roads where we have potholes or any bad impacts happening on those roads. There are potential good roads that can be redeveloped. We looked at our utility map, and we already have sewer and water going through that area. And so if any development wants to come in, it is a vibrant place for such development. Along the street, we also have community facilities. The baseball complex is along Old Tyler Road, and so we believe that it's also a good attraction for any development that wants to come into the neighborhood. We looked at the weakness of that intersection, that is Old Tyler Road and Austin Street. Housing, along Old Tyler Road, we have some mobile home parks which are in really bad shapes, and something that we have to look at. And then utility infrastructure, even though we have some utilities along that areas, there's, like I mentioned earlier, with regards to the terrain, extending those utilities can be an issue for future development. But it's just a weakness. It doesn't mean that nothing cannot be done about it. And so once we're able to identify our weakness, then we'll be able to make plans for solutions in the future. Therefore, opportunities.
I guess I'll take over. So different opportunities is the land use. There's a lot of vacant land. While it may not be solely 100% on Old Tyler Road or West Austin Street, there's plenty of potential vacant land for redevelopment or development. Housing, a lot of the housing, while it is aging or while it is mobile homes, they're low cost, so there's a low barrier of entry if people want to rehabilitate any of the aging single-family residential there. As it looks at the streetscape, this could be a potential gateway. I-69 going around the loop could allow this to be a gateway into Nacogdoches. It's a good opportunity as it relates to potential commercial development and that node at the intersection for commercial development to be able to frame how people entering into Nacogdoches might perceive Nacogdoches. And then, of course, there's always improvements to be able to improve the baseball complex, make that a catalyst, a place to a community service event place. But some of the threats that might come into this area, current zoning regulations, the majority of the zoning, if it's not B2 general business, like at the top near the loop currently, it is either R3 two-family or it's A agriculture, and that restricts a lot of development that may come, especially commercial development. A lot of at the intersections, I believe it's one of these. It's either R3 or agriculture. It's not B2 currently. Housing, especially as it relates to the mobile homes. They've been grandfathered in, and that relates a threat, a challenge. But it's not to say that it's not an opportunity to be able to have strong rehabilitation, redevelopment in that area. As it relates to the streetscape, while the streetscape is very autocentric, it's parking lots against the street. They have large front setbacks. They have chain link fences. I think a few of them are selling tractor trailers, and that's what you see on the street. While it's a threat, through the SWOT analysis, we believe that through future redevelopment and rehabilitation, that we'll be able to take that as an opportunity to be able to help frame the streetscape better. And then the environment, topography, the lay of the land is not flat, so that will pose a challenge for any major development that may come in.
Okay, so this is just one out of the 4. Like I said, our goal is to organize a community meeting with all citizens and stakeholders. And as time goes on, we hope we will have a good discussion on this, and all of these will fit into how we want to see Nacogdoches grow. I believe ever since I started working here, I've always been looking at long-range plans, and these are some of the things that I like to work on, and the city manager also gives direction on some of these. I think his main focus is for us to look at the I-69 and South Street and try to see how best we can channel some of these developments that are coming into the city towards South Street, because everything is on North Street now, and I know economic development is also interested in working to see growth in other part of the city. So these are some of the things that are going on, and once we are ready to work on all these community meetings and all of that, we'll discuss that with you and have a strategy on how to move forward with it.
So how do you foresee those stakeholder meetings and community meetings? I mean, is that something, as you get more put together, a little stronger? I mean, are you just planning on having several kind of sit-down meetings, like town hall meetings? Is that what you're thinking, or what do you how do you foresee it?
Yeah, something similar to that, a town hall meeting. We as city staff will come in with a clean sheet and solicit ideas from citizens and find out how they want to perceive stuff. Somebody living on the South Street might look at development in a different way than somebody living on the east or west side. So it's going to be town hall meetings. And one thing I've done in other cities is what we call the meeting in a box, where you take the meeting to the people. So for example, if there's a community event happening on the west, east, or north part of the city, then as on the weekend, city staff can go in there, discuss some of this stuff with them, and try to see how best we can solicit information from them.
So I was wondering just how you get good attendance. And It
Yes.
sounds like, you have to kind of think, like you say, think outside the box and go to doing different things, just to just putting something in a newspaper or Facebook or something, you're not gonna get a real good attendance. And so just trying to figure out how to,
Great.
because you need that really strong input, and some
Sure.
people won't. So.
And I think our communications director helps a lot. The city has a strong Facebook following. And so those are some of the channels that we would also look at. People are very vibrant. Most of the time they tend to complain more on Facebook, but now we'll give them the chance to do more of that on Facebook. So we're hoping to get more information. Yeah.
As a planning professional, I'm sure you've studied the effect that an interstate moving into a town will have on development inside the city limits. I guess it's still inside the city limits, but the interior development. It seems to me that knowing that even if it doesn't fully develop for 20 or 30 years, if it's coming, we kind of have to do all of our strategic planning with that as the baseline for any decisions that have to be made. 'Cause somebody might say, we really want to do this on South Street, but as soon as people can just get on an overpass and go left,
Yes.
and what's the point of developing? I mean,
Exactly.
it seems to me and it purely anecdotal and from driving around other towns in Texas, but it seems like when you take the business route into town, it doesn't look like it's really growing in those areas.
Sure.
So what is the from a planning perspective, what's the threat or the opportunity, or what do you think is going to happen when the interstate goes down that footprint?
Typical example, I worked in the city of Wichita Falls, and the interstate out there actually killed the downtown of Wichita Falls.
Really?
Initially, so when they moved the interstate, all the traffic had to divert and join the I-44 to Oklahoma. So nobody was driving through the downtown. So all those areas begin to go down and the businesses had to close. So the interstate does not necessarily increase businesses like everybody, like most people think. It has a great potential to also kill a whole, area. So I think I've always talked about the reason to give people the chance to exit. I remember when I think there was a case on Stone and Sun quarrying along the loop. My focus was, let's put development along these roads that will make somebody want to exit and enjoy the city. And so in my opinion, bringing the interstate does not necessarily mean that it's going to bring positive stuff on Nacogdoches. It has a high potential to also divert traffic away from the city. And so I'm happy you are also thinking in that route. It is not a smooth, it's not an automatic advantage. It also has a very bad disadvantage. And I saw an example of that in Wichita Falls, where the new road was more of a flyover. And so nobody drove within the city again, and all the developments along that street had to go away. And so we'll look at it from both sections. That is why we think the SWOT analysis does not only look at the strengths, but we look at the threats and the challenges that this development would also bring in.
Yeah, because just like anything else, you hear about the mom and pop shops
Yes.
closing down, and then you've got the chains that are going out on the interstate, and so
Yeah.
you have to be careful with protecting that too.
Well, it also gives you an opportunity, though, like, if you've got businesses relocating to the interstate, you're gonna end up with new, hopefully, real estate on North Street that you can maybe turn into mixed use or something else, yeah.
But, well, what I have seen is once the businesses begin to locate on the service road and the loop, sometimes it kills the inner cities, because then now all attention is along the loop and nobody is interested in driving along North Street. So, like I said, in Wichita Falls, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Development went outside along the highways and it killed. So it could be both ways, but your point is also valid.
Yeah.
Maybe it might even reduce rent along North Street because there's another development area. So those who can afford some of the rent on North Street will then move in and stuff like that. So it's called a filtering process, where as one moves higher, another development also comes in to fill them. So we'll see. But in my opinion, a highway does not necessarily mean a positive impact on the city. It can be both ways. So I'm happy you also see it that way.
Yeah, well, it seems to me like we need to try to figure out how to,
Sure.
like, look at other cities that have, and I think a lot of it's probably based on our geographic location.
Yes.
You know, 'cause Wichita Falls, how close is Wichita Falls to the next big city? Is it-
There isn't any, probably the next 2 hours.
Oh, really? It's that
Yeah.
far?
Yeah.
Okay. The, well, here it seems like we're in a position where you gotta get off the interstate somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
And
So,
it even
it's-
goes to the city of Killeen. So I-90 became I-44. And then in Hacker Heights, because they had the potential to become an interstate, they built a big shopping complex along the highway.
Yeah.
Every development that comes in wants to locate along that area. And so it's so tight, and nobody's interested in developing in the older parts of town.
Yeah.
Because they know that the traffic is along that corridor. And so whilst I was there for almost 3 years, every development wanted to be tagged along the interstate, including doctor's office, dentist office, and where you would think they want to be in the neighborhood and serve the neighborhood. No, everybody wanted to be located along the interstate. So if I go to Hacker Heights now, even in Killeen, you see a lot of doctor's office along the highway, which in other words, you probably think they'll be in the older part of town where they can easily access residents and all of those stuff. So it has both ways, and we need to start thinking about it.
okay.
Any other thoughts or concerns?
I think it goes back to you talking about making things more visibly
Sure.
pleasing. So you have to have, I guess, some of that. And we've got to figure out a way to keep that downtown. And yeah, there's gonna be commercial businesses on the loop and all along the I-69. But we've got to figure out a way to make people want to turn and come a different direction. And how are we gonna do that?
Yes.
So,
So I know cities have even had high budget for identity, putting what is it, like some sort of mark or sign to let you know that you are now in Nacogdoches, and attractive entryways and all of those stuff. But like I said, it all has to do with finances. But yeah, the key point, like you said, is giving people a reason to divert and come into the city of Nacogdoches is
Yeah.
what we also have to look at. So,
Yep, I agree. Anything else?
it's a public.
Anybody like to speak on the matter?
I would just say one thing about Old Tyler Road, Matt Moore. As y'all are going through and doing that, I hope you respect, justice for the people that live out there, the people that live there a long time, and how that's gonna impact their lifestyle and whether or not they actually benefit from city investment. But I'd like to say something more about the bypass or the loop. Typical interstate freeway system is 2 lanes, a little place to drive on here, drainage ditch median, something else, and then 2 frontage roads, and then whatever you want to do on the side. Why not take the area that's on the side of the roads, increase it a little bit, make that planted like they do in Lufkin as you're south of town, where they do a lot of landscaping, and then have the frontage roads more localized, because I don't think that many people are going to be driving, from Houston to Oklahoma City or wherever the road will go and say, hey, I think see something, I'm going to pull over there. So if we think now and talk to TxDOT and Federal Highway Administration, get a wider right-of-way and have a vegetative buffer, like maybe 100 feet of really nice trees, and then the frontage roads, that would be more like a parkway than just an interstate freeway. Now, whether or not, I think people are saying we can't do that. Well, we can, or at least we can try to do it. Sure. So when you say about beauty, people talk about wanting to do economic development. I asked the city manager once to tell me the number of businesses that have not moved here because there were too many requirements to do things that benefited the city. That number is 0. So nobody has ever chosen not to build a building because the city asked them to do something that benefited the city as a whole. And so this is a long-term plan, but we've been working on it for I don't know how many decades, and I haven't seen a plan that's suggesting something like that. So y'all could be the ones that do that. Thanks.
Yeah, we're kind of on the cusp of something that very rarely do you have an interstate coming through your city that, you have an opportunity to kind of, not say set history, but, at least be able to, change the precedent a little bit with it, for sure. I agree. Anything else? All right, well, we'll close the meeting. It is 5:43. Thank y'all for coming.
You need one of those things to hit on.
Get carried away with it.